I read a lot. I read to try and keep up to date with what's happening in the family law system and what's happening in terms of legal process, etc., etc. But I also read other people's books in order to try and get a decent, informed opinion. And I've just read this one. This is He Said, She Said, written by Charlotte Proudman. Now, you may be familiar with Charlotte Proudman. She is a very well-known family law barrister. She's quite vocal in her opinions, and I respect that. She's using her position of authority in order to call out a lot of the issues and inadequacies in the family court system. And she's a huge advocate for women. And Charlotte's view is that women are quite downtrodden in the family court system. And that is in contrast to some of my opinions. Whilst I have some agreement with her that I think women can be downtrodden in the family court system, and the way that the family court system deals with victims of abuse is perhaps not the most sensitive. But also, if you follow any of my broadcasts, you will see that I'm quite an advocate for men and for dads, and how dads are underrepresented and undermined in the family court system. So if Charlotte Proudman is saying that the family court system is betraying women, and I am saying that the family court system is betraying men, surely we both can't be right. One of us has to be wrong, but I think that's not the case. I think both of us are right. And I think the issues within the family court system are betraying both men and women. But what I wanted to do is I'm just going to read a piece from Charlotte's book. As I said, He Said, She Said, The Truth, the Trauma and the Struggle for Justice in Family Court. And this is an extract where Charlotte is meeting one of her clients outside the Royal Courts of Justice, which are on the Strand in London, in case you're not familiar. If I had not been looking for Denise, I might easily have missed her, a frail figure almost swallowed up by a vast stone edifice. Perhaps dozens of men and women in suits had hurried past as she sat outside the Royal Courts of Justice, huddled over against the freezing cold January morning. Had any of them noticed that she was in tears? Certainly none of them could have realised how much it had cost her to reach this point, the trauma that even stepping over the threshold of this building would represent. I had already been representing Denise for several months, but this was the first time that we had met in person. The sight of her face on a screen and her measured tones of her voice on the phone had masked the reality. This was a woman who appeared utterly overwhelmed, as much by the situation facing her as by the building which loomed behind her. Like many clients that I represent, who have been worrying about this day in court for months, if not years, knowing that their future is at stake, Denise was a walking portrait of anxiety and fatigue. And that's quite an emotional description of meeting with your client. And that illustrates quite clearly that there is a bond, or at least there should be, a bond between client and representative. And I wanted to just read from another extract now, which describes a father in this instance. Obviously Denise is a mother. The tables were full of shoppers grabbing a snack between stores, or elderly people immersing themselves in noise and chatter that their empty homes deny them. He sat quietly in a corner staring out of the window, his eyes tracing the pavement outside, looking, longing. It had been 18 months since he had last seen his two children, 18 long months marked by 3 court hearings and many hours of conversation with me, but little else. His opening address was predictable. 542 days today since... His voice trailed away and I shook his hand. He was another dad, another of my dads, trapped in a prison with no walls, no bars, no guards, and most tragically, no visiting hours. He returned to staring out of the window, and I placed the 2 coffees on the table and sat down. At some point, I will explain to him for the umpteenth time that today's hearing is largely procedural, and he will be no closer to seeing his children at the end of it than he is now. I joined him in staring out of the window, both of us looking for his children. I've never seen them, but then for 542 days, nor has he. And I think the point of that is to describe the futility that I often see, and Charlotte Proudman describes in her engagement with her client, the futility that I often see in my clients when I approach them on the day of a hearing. They're desperate to be positive, and they're desperate to know that today's the day that some tiny chip will be knocked off the block which is obstructing them from having a normal life with their children, be they the primary carer or not. Both parents are impacted by proceedings, regardless of where the children sit. But I find in my role and in the practice that we run that I'm faced by 2 prisons that appear time and time and time again, and primarily just 2 prisons. I see the prison of dad, which is described in that extract that I've just read, that it's a prison that dad is trapped in, where there are no walls and there are no bars and there are no guards, but there's no visiting hours, so he doesn't get to see his children, and he's trapped, helpless to be able to get out until such times as these proceedings release him. If indeed they ever do, because proceedings do end with fathers having no contact with their children for whatever reason. And so they are held within that prison, potentially for the rest of their lives. And then the second prison that I find myself confronting, visiting from time to time, is the prison of mum. And the prison of mum is one of abuse. It's a haunted house of abuse that the victims who present themselves to me, and then we look to support them and look after them, that they are trapped in. And as we go through proceedings, we hopefully, slowly but surely, manage to open the blinds, unfurl the shutters on that haunted house and let some daylight in order that the abuse that hides in the darkness, that hides in the shadows for that mother, is slowly alleviated. And so when reading this book, I was touched by the fact that Charlotte Proudman describes sensitivity for her clients and a futility in her clients that I see in mine. And that spurs us both on, it would appear, to continue to do what it is that we are trying to do every day.